of the year. So it's a treat and a privilege that she's here to talk to us about a fascinating case study. This is a real world case study, none of your theory. This is what actually happened when a company had its entire business model obliterated overnight when we went into lockdown, and what Sarah did to put it right. So she's been in L&D for 18 years, which is impossible to believe. I won't accept that. She looks like she's been in L&D for 18 months, not 18 years. So her specialisms are behavior change, motivation, sales, and coaching. And she's worked with lots of brands. The case study is about Ann Summers, and she's now sarahratcliff.com. So she's become an entity in her own right, as she deserves to do. So Sarah, I'm going to hand over to you, and welcome today. Thanks for agreeing to present, and we're all looking forward to hearing from you.
Oh, thank you, Nigel, for such a wonderful introduction. And of course, thank you to Learning Technologies and to Donald and the whole team that really has sat behind the sessions this week. It's been fantastic to be taking part, and, you know, a real honour to be here with you all, most definitely. So I'm here today to talk to you about what we did at Ann Summers, because of course we're still in a pandemic, aren't we? And so this has struck businesses really, really hard. And so I want to kick off with a question, really, because I want to know, what did you want to achieve from learning when COVID first struck? And we've got a little question panel there for you to put your answers into. So if we put our answers into where it says list your priorities, that will be super helpful. So what did you want to achieve from learning when COVID struck? Because of course we were all up in the air, weren't we? So Liz said she wanted to come out of lockdown Zoom ready. Victoria wanted to do that remote working and leading that remote workforce. Angela wanted to work better online. Ian here wanted to continue to deliver a service to our volunteers. I love that. Ifaf, if I pronounced your name correctly, it was a chance to do different courses. You're absolutely right. I agree with that totally. So many answers coming in here. So Teresa's saying that she needed that discipline working at home, and there was a big shift towards that, wasn't there, about how do we work at home differently. Mental health, again, was a big thing here, which I can see that Jackie's put in there. And I think that we've kind of moved through COVID being really conscious of the impact that it could have on our mental health. Rebecca wanted to continue to offer training and make it relevant, which I agree totally. It is about it being relevant for your audience, isn't it? And that is certainly what I was trying to do at Ann Summers. So there's lots more things coming in here, lots of interesting things as well. Just give me a second to have a look. So Jacqueline wanted to have good life balance and to support her colleagues, which is fantastic. And this is interesting. So Janet wanted to run stakeholder workshops online. I'd love to know a little bit more around what you were trying to achieve with that, Janet. That's really interesting. So lots about work-life balance, remote working, being relevant, all things that are really, really important. And at Ann Summers, if we can just move to the next layout, Nigel, that would be brilliant. At Ann Summers, we wanted one thing, okay? Just one thing here, and that was to keep the business afloat. Because Ann Summers is a retail business with several different sales channels. So we've got their online business, we've got retail, and we've got Party Plan. And I'm going to talk about Party Plan in a moment, because what happened overnight was that retail went. So retail went, everyone was in shock. We all know kind of our reaction to what happened. It was the most surreal thing that certainly I've experienced in my lifetime. And as a business, we were absolutely in a state of panic. And so what we actually got from this, which may surprise you all, and I'm sure is why many of you have come on to learn about what actually happened today, is that we did keep afloat, but not only did we keep afloat, we have grown. We have managed to grow the party plan business. We have had a significant rise in our ambassadors. We've had a significant rise in the amount of ambassadors that are out there working. And I'm going to tell you in a moment who those ambassadors are and how they work, just so that you can get to know them a little bit more. We've also had a tremendous rise in product as a result of the other two boxes here. And my last box there, which is sitting there in green, says every cloud. Because actually the real outcome that I find fascinating and encouraging from all of this is that actually I think that L&D can sometimes be seen as a bolt-on, a nice to have. How do we support and look after our people? But for me, it's more than that. It is about getting the business driving forward by developing the skills of the people that you've got sitting at the heart of the business. Your people are usually your biggest expense in a business. So to put the investment into them, I see it as being absolutely important, and I'd love to know what your thoughts are in the comments. And so when I say every cloud, what I mean by that is that all of a sudden we had hit a pain point. The business absolutely needed support for their people to keep moving this forward. And for the first time in a long time, I think lots of L&D professionals have found that they suddenly had a voice. They suddenly were able to get deeper into the business and be able to impact and influence stakeholders to start turning L&D into what they really knew would make a difference. And I thought that was really, really powerful. And so with that, I want to introduce you to my party plan audience here. So we had 3 channels at Ann Summers at the time. And of course, online continued to trade. Retail had been closed, and we then had party plan. Now, I want to introduce you to party plan because one of the things that I'm most keen on and what I believe very, very strongly in is that whenever you are designing any sort of learning, you have to really understand your audience. You have to know what makes them tick. You have to understand what motivates them, because you need to engage them in that learning, but also make that learning worthwhile for them, because actually all we ever really want to do is get our jobs done and do it well. Nobody goes out to fail at their jobs, do they? We all go out to do a great job. So let me introduce you to these party plan ladies. So at the time of lockdown, we had around 4,500 out there in the field. Now, these are self-employed direct salespeople. But don't be fooled, okay? So you may think that Ann Summers and direct sales is ladies trying to earn a little bit of pin money. But believe me, it is really, really varied. So there are ladies in there that perhaps maybe do the odd party at a weekend just so that they can go out and buy themselves a nice thing. But there is also some really, really big business going on here. You have got teams of women that are in their hundreds. You have got women here who are women that have got complete financial security. So I could sit with you all day long and tell you some of the amazing stories that I have heard in my time at Ann Summers. And I think one of the most powerful was a nurse who needed to give up her career to look after her husband. And now she runs a huge empire within Ann Summers. So when the pandemic struck, these women were panicking. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the panic in a moment. But the reason that they had this panic was because their business was built on Ann Summers parties. So we're going to throw up a little poll here now to find out Actually, yeah. So did we have a poll in here, I think, to find
We
out who
do, yeah.
has ever been? I don't think we have here at this one, actually.
No.
So I'm curious as to, I think we're going to use the reaction. So at the top of your screen, folks, you have got a reaction here, and you've got a little person with their hand sticking up. And if you've been to an Ann Summers party, just press agree. Let me see how many of you out there have been to Ann Summers parties. There's lots of people raising a hand here, including gentlemen. So I'm a little bit perturbed by this. Gentlemen at an Ann Summers party. I've never heard of this. So the reason that it's so phenomenal what's happened at Ann Summers is that their business is built on parties. So for those of you that have ever been to an Ann Summers party, it's an experience of personal sales in somebody's home. So an ambassador would come out to somebody's home and run a great party where they are providing that personal sales experience. So when COVID struck, that was gone. So as far as our ambassadors was concerned, their businesses were gone. They were relying, in many cases, on this business. And overnight it was gone. So I now want you to imagine that Ann Summers party of 4,500 ambassadors on a ship that is potentially sinking. The panic was real. These women thought that they would lose their homes, their businesses. They didn't know how they were going to support their children. For many, they were the sole breadwinner. They had the sole income. And that was really, really scary. And whilst we had lots of support from the government for the furlough scheme, Ann Summers ambassadors really could have fell through the net here. And so we really had to help them to flip their business. And I'd love you to think about for a moment what the skill set of an Ann Summers ambassador is, because they go into a party and yes, they've got to do selling skills, and yes, they've got to have influencing skills and a little bit of presentation skills as well. But as we all know, that flip from face-to-face to virtual, that's a whole other ball game. So as L&D professionals, I know there's lots of people that have thought, crikey, how are we going to do that? So, and we're experienced professionals. So imagine being put into that position when you're out there and haven't had any formal training to make that happen. But Ann Summers did throw them a lifeline. And that lifeline onto this sinking ship of panic was that we changed the joining fee so that they could access a digital environment for free. But as the people person, the L&D specialist in all this, I then started to panic because I thought, okay, we've got a sinking ship, and if we're going to add more people into that, the ship could sink faster. So I very quickly had to get a lifeboat, okay? And I think we do have a poll for this, Nigel, because I would love to know, which of these lifeboats would you choose when your ship is sinking? Would you go for the sophisticated one, or would you be going for the simple one? And there's a poll on the screen, and also I'd love to know why you make that choice. So I can see that Victoria and William are popping in their answers here. So Victoria's saying she'd want function over form. William, agile thinking. Carol's saying simple is fast. Catherine wants a quick getaway. And I can see that the poll votes are coming through, and the majority of you have gone for simple. And actually, simple is exactly what I did, because simple is agile. You're absolutely right. So bells and whistles are lovely, aren't they? We all love something a bit fancy. I love something a bit fancy. However, fancy costs more money, right? But it's not just about that. Fancy has lots of fancy gadgets on. So actually, we have to upskill and learn to use those properly. So we needed something that was agile, that would get the job done quickly and practically. And that is exactly what we did. And if we can just move forward, Nigel, back to the slides, because what then happened was I had to choose some of the simple bells and whistles that I wanted on my lifeboat. Now, all of these are important. And so I'm going to hand it over to all of you guys now, because I'm literally going to let you choose which ones I talk about in what order. And so you can see that each of my bells and whistles have got a number on the top. So fastest fingers first into the chat. The first number that I see is the one that I talk about. So I am going to let you go forward. So Steve is in there. So the rest of you, Steve's beating you to it, folks. So Steve has said number 4. Steve wants to know about collaboration. And you know what? Collaboration is key here. And at a time of fight or flight, we'd hit that pain point, we actually had the business in a great place. And from the recent LinkedIn Learning report, that has reported that 70% of L&D professionals have reported that CEOs championed learning in this time. So I think we've got a great opportunity whilst people are listening to move this forward. And so with this collaboration, what I found was that in L&D, I think for the most of us, we really know our people, don't we? We know our learners, we know what they need. And sometimes it's about that blocker getting into the business, because actually we're closer. And I saw it as myself being a bridge between the business and the learners. And I was then able to have better collaboration at the very start of the conversations. So I was able to be in a position where I got to, rather than being the last person that they spoke to saying, oh, and by the way, we need some training, which always frustrated me, it was then a case of, Sarah, how can you help, and how can we help you? So I then got to speak to marketing and logistics and the trading director and find out about how we could really enhance learning right at the start of the journey. And as we were changing, because of course lockdown and the pandemic brought more issues. So we were having issues with stock because, of course, we couldn't get things from A to B. So I was then able to smooth the waters for the field by wrapping learning solutions around what they could do. So we were always looking at what can we do rather than what can't we do. So next one, what is my next bell and whistle? Fastest finger first. I'll take the first number that comes up and I can see, okay, so Ian's got it. Number 5, resources. So my lifeboat here is pretty simple. We were in a pandemic. Nobody knew how businesses were going to fare, so there definitely wasn't any more budget to be thrown around. So we had to use what we got. Now, I'm a farmer's daughter, so I'm fairly resourceful at the best of times. But we looked at things that would help, and we looked at the systems that we had in place. And actually, because retail had shut down, that freed up a few resources that retail would use that we could wrap around what we were doing. So we used Teams to the best of our advantage. And for a long time, I had been talking about the benefits of remote working. And I'm sure lots of you out there have suddenly gone, hallelujah, because as trainers, as L&D people, sometimes we can be working remotely. So that started to work more effectively. I wasn't having to wait for an invite to get into the boardroom. We were able to pull people together really quickly over Teams. We were also able to get the messages out to the field quickly by utilising the CRM system and using the emails, so we could push learning out to people and put it in their pathway really. We were then also able to use social media. So Facebook is a great resource on a low budget L&D. We were able to use Facebook for giving them units so they could access their information quickly, for presenting to them and give motivational talks, to do training sessions on there, to really pull people together in social collaboration. So we all know that the real rich element of learning is when we can talk about it and discuss it and put it into practice and then discuss it some more. And actually, Facebook really gave us that platform to do that. And the other thing was we were able to say, okay, everything's changed. The whole world has been thrown up in the air. Who wants to help? And we were able to ask, who will help us? And we had people coming from all elements, all sides of the business saying, well, we can do this. We can help you with some more marketing. We can make your practical guides look a bit more fancy, Sarah. So all of this gave us some great resources to work with, and we were able to do it really quickly. So what is my next number? So we got number 3, role modeling. Now, this is a particular favorite of mine because I do believe that you have to put yourself in your learner's shoes, really. And what we learned over the kind of 3-month period that I'm showcasing these numbers for is that a lot of resource was put in. So I was writing guides on how to present a virtual party, how to do this, how to engage your audience. We had videos, we had webinars, we had it all going on, lots of different ways for people to learn. But they were scared. So some of these people had never done a home party, because you can imagine we were bringing new people into the business at the same time, and they were scared. We know as learning professionals, I was a trainer for many, many years and was very, very comfortable in my place, in a workshop, on a stage, talking to people. But I can remember coming to do my first webinar and thinking, oh, crikey, this is a whole different ball game. So these women out there are working remotely, they're working on their own, they're in a state of panic. My learning solutions alone weren't just enough. So I had to show them. So I then role modeled a virtual party. I stepped completely out of my comfort zone and ran a virtual party for our thousands of party ambassadors. And there were some sticky moments in my practice sessions, let's be honest. But what that did was it gave them comfort. It simplified it for them. So they were able to look at a guide and think, right, that's what Sarah's saying I need to do. They were able to watch a video, but when they were able to come along and attend a virtual party and see it delivered true to form, that's when it became doable. And from that session alone, the spike in profit and commercial return was huge because it simplified it. It brought it all into context for them. And what it also did during that time, and being out there with them and being able to walk in their shoes, it meant that I was able to identify more areas where we could make it easier for them, take away some blockers. And so I was able to work with the business to make that happen. And yet, you know what? Some of that isn't learning and development. This is about business performance. But any blocker you can take away that helps the development of your people is great, right? Okay, so what's the next number? I'm really conscious of time here because I can talk. Number 1, says Catherine, access. So this is about accessibility. And I want to say here, make it easy. Now, I am not saying make the learning easy, because we all know that if we really want to learn something new, it isn't always easy, and nor should it be. We should be on a track of personal development. But the blocker should never be how you access learning. Our field teams were in a state of panic. I did not want them using any energy having to find their learning solutions. I wanted them to put all their energy into how they developed so they could get out, keep their businesses afloat, and make money. So this was all about how we can put their learning solutions where they are. So if they're on Facebook, let's put them on Facebook. This was about using the CRM email system to get it pushed out to them so it was landing in their inbox. And what I can absolutely say now is that everywhere you turn in Anne Summers' party plan, there is a signpost to the right learning journey for them. There is no mistake on where they need to go. It is everywhere because we looked at every blocker that stood in their way to access learning, and we made that bit easy for them. So I think we're down to the last number, and I'm not very good at...
Sarah, can I just interrupt? Just quickly, there's a question there that Sarah asked, which is how much impact did the launch party have on sales? So give us a quantum. You don't have to tell us the exact amount, but what was the hit to Anne Summers when they couldn't do the sales? And therefore...
Okay, so the hit to sales overall during this was, I think we were in the high 200s, nearly 300% up in commercial return in profit from the flip to virtual parties and going online. But that isn't just about that number, because actually we were bringing more people into the business continually at that time as well. So yeah, a huge return, and it simplified it for them. It literally, they'd had lots of resources, but they were still scared. So I put myself out there for the business, and the spike over that weekend, all of a sudden they got it. They were able to put all the resources together, and I don't think it was about the learning, it was about the fear of trying it, and they needed to see it done first. You know, and I suppose when we're doing face-to-face training, that's why we would role play and do great demonstrations, isn't it? Because we want people to see what they need to do. But what we were asking our field teams to do was quite a lot, really, from where their starting point was. So yeah, so the spike was massive. The numbers, I mean, we had numbers and data flying around every which way at that time, so I can't give you a specific number right now for that particular intervention, because we were putting interventions in everywhere. So for example, when a sudden stock delivery would arrive, I would literally go out there and show our field teams how they could sell that particular item of stock so that it made it easy for them. And so every piece of data we got, the graphs were just going like this all the time. But overall profit was, I think, over the 3 months, at the 3-month mark, I think it was something like 294% up, something like that. But it was big. It was really big, and is continuing, so which is great. So I'm just conscious of time. So the last one here is number 2, which is leadership. And what we all know is that leadership of any team will dictate the overall mood. And the leadership teams, they had the most to lose at this point because they had the biggest businesses, and they had hundreds and hundreds of women that were relying on them to kind of set the course, really. So one of the things that we did very early on at the outset was to provide some really quick upskilling of the leadership team, but also communication. Communication was really important because they needed to know what we were doing, how we were doing it. And so at that point, we were pulling them together at that point on a daily basis so that they knew exactly what intervention was happening, how we were working with operations to make all that happen. And once they were then reassured, that feeling then went out to all the field teams, so everybody came with us. And what I can absolutely say from that is that the appetite for learning has gone nowhere. So we are still running live sessions day in, day out, to be fair, and we have still got a huge appetite for that learning. And I think it's because we put all of these bells and whistles on our lifeboat have come together really, really well. So they are the five functions of my lifeboat that got Ann Summers to where it is. And like I said, we had a rise in ambassador base. We had a rise in our active ambassadors. So how many women were out there making money, supporting their families? Our profit, nearly 300% up on that time period. And really, really fabulously, L&D had a voice, which was amazing. So I think we've got a little poll coming up for you, because what I would love to know now is, knowing what you now know about what we put in place, how many ambassadors do you think Ann Summers now has out in the field? And I'm really, really curious. Some numbers coming through here, some great numbers coming through.
So there was a question from Sarah, which was, how long are the virtual sessions, those briefing sessions that you talked about? Can you give us an idea? Are they 5 minutes or an hour, or
The
how long did
briefing
you run them for?
sessions, what do you mean for the virtual parties? Or so for the virtual party, it would run as a virtual party. So and I'm still doing them. So I've got one on next week. So we would do it in the evening, because that's when a lot of people would have virtual parties. It would start about 8 o'clock. We'd use Facebook events to do it. So it's not full online, or it's not presenting the whole time. There's lots of fun stuff going on in between, and I was able to demonstrate that to them. So that would last, a virtual party would last about an hour and a half, but don't confuse that with a virtual training session. So in terms of onboarding all the new ambassadors that were flooding into our big ship here, they last an hour. So, and that would include a Q&A session as well. And, you know, we would always then follow on from that with a little bit of social learning as well. So I would then come in kind of at the end of the week onto Facebook, ask them what's working. We're always asking them to tag us and let us know what's happening, and so that we can really create those conversations, because that's when people are learning from each other. And what I always say, it's not about you coming onto this session and being with me right now. The important bit is about what you do after this. So then we pull them back together, and I talk about my learning heroes, and they celebrate success. And that's one thing that I didn't mention, actually. What we really did was to keep the momentum going, was when we were pulling people in, and so people were joining, they were utilizing all the training resources. We were using the data to show us who these people were. They were then having this huge spike in what they were doing in businesses. We would then pull them on and say, would you do a video about your success? So we were showcasing L&D throughout the whole time period. So more people thought, oh my goodness, if I don't do this, I am going to miss out. And I can see here in the poll here that there's a real mixed bag. So I just want to let you all know, we have now more than 20,000 ambassadors in Ann Summers. And I can't give you the number because it moves daily, hourly. Yesterday I did an onboarding session for them, and people are joining up, and within hours they are coming on learning webinars with me, which I just think is phenomenal. They're joining and going, there it is, because all of the learning is being directed at them. There's almost kind of no escape, but they're coming on and they're getting results straight away, which is absolutely fantastic. So just move.
So you had 4,500 before, and you're now at 20,000 plus. Amazing. I'll go back to the presentation.
It's been phenomenal. It really, really has been phenomenal. Chloe's asking here, how long was the virtual session? Was it live? Yes, it absolutely was. It was live. And what I did, which sounds a bit bonkers, but I was really conscious that people had attended the training and that they were then asking to come in and role play with me. So they were being my customers and I was being an Ann Summers ambassador. And every now and again, I would stop what I was doing and I'd put a cap on. I'd say, right, okay, now we're in training zone. And I just want to explain to you what I did there. So it was real life, but then I would stop it and just bring the context into it for them, which was great. Angela's also asking, what's the plan post lockdown and shops reopening? So our shops are reopening now, and the expectation is that we keep going and kind of moving forward, which takes me beautifully onto my last slide here. My nearly last slide is about moving forward, and this is about now utilizing some of those great relationships that we've built over this time to see different departments that, you know, in many businesses, I think departments can get lost and start working in silos. At this point in time, we all started working hand in hand, which was brilliant. And it's now about using the data and all the information and the learning that we have had from over that time period to keep that collaboration going, and then use that momentum, use this as a springboard to keep L&D moving in the right direction. And that's what we did. And so what we're now going to do, Nigel, is have a Q&A session, aren't we? So I am pretty proud of what we've achieved in the last 3 months. We have got teams of passionate business women out there who are making a difference, and I just feel really grateful that I was able to help them do that.
Yeah, can I ask the first question cheekily, and that is, how did you choose what you chose? You used Facebook events. Did that emerge naturally? Did you select that and impose it on everyone? Did you ask for a poll? How did you make the technology choices?
So I'm super nosy, and I always want to understand what's going on. So this for me is about asking the questions. So when we first brought the leadership teams together to find out what they needed, how were we going to make it work, I asked lots of questions, and I think it's about understanding where your audience is and what's going to make it easy for them. So the more I dug around in that is where I got my answers from. So you've got to be a little bit of a detective, haven't you? Where are your people? What do they need? But what does the business need? And how can you join those two parts together?
Yeah, excellent. Now, Heike says, role modeling a sales talk with a cap indicating the change. You truly are unique. That sounds a really smart thing to do. So you're demonstrating and then explaining, but making it clear when there's a transition. So again, how did that happen? Was that something you stumbled upon, or did someone tell you to do that? How did you work out something like that, which was clearly very successful?
No, nobody told me to do it. And a few people probably thought I was bonkers at the time for doing it. But what I was really aware of, as we were watching the numbers very, very closely day in, day out, we could see the impact that different training interventions were having. And when you are in that kind of social collaboration with people, because we already had a Facebook group that they used to collaborate on and we could get information out to them on, they're very active in that group. So that means that we can ask them lots of questions. By doing a simple poll, you can get information from your field teams really, really quickly. Put a poll out there. You've got 20,000 people now on a Facebook group, and they're all going to tell you what their opinion is. And so we asked questions, and what I realized was that it wasn't enough. We still had lots of ladies out there who were scared. They were scared to go live. And so what we did was because it was a digital offering, they weren't able to demonstrate any kind of products or anything like that. So we worked with marketing to get demonstration videos done. And then I said, I need to put myself out here on the front foot with them, really, and show them. And I come from my passion for learning comes, it's all about behavior and people, really, but it stems from my background in the equestrian world. So I'm from a farming background. You know, I've trained horses. I'm a qualified riding instructor. And if somebody doesn't understand by giving them instructions or by, attending a training session, then you show them how it's done. So I think it comes from years of experience and understanding the field teams, really. And I think that Nigel may have, I think he might have gone for a cup of tea, you
What
know.
happened there? Let me take over. Can you hear me, Sarah?
Yes, oh, it's just Don. Just Don wanted a chance to
Don
speak,
said
didn't you?
I threw Nigel. Nigel may be coming back. Let me ask you a quick question. Tools.
Yeah.
Liz wants to know what platform did you use for onboarding and social learning. Carol wanted some more detail on Facebook for storing training. Nigel's coming back. I'll hand it back to him. Just answer that one.
Yeah, so onboarding, so we use Zoom webinars quite a lot in Ann Summers. I quickly realised when I joined the business quite a few years ago that we had thousands of ambassadors out in the field, and there is one of me. So, you know, L&D for Ann Summers is Sarah Ratcliff. Okay, so there was one of me, and there is no way I could be doing, I had to come up with something that got to many people that would give them that consistent message, because we needed to do a lot of behavior change when I started years ago. So we use Zoom for that onboarding. We use a lot of useful resources. So again, it's not, budgets are tight, and so it's about giving them useful things. So I give them lots of things like checklists, useful guides that they can use with their teams, anything that is useful that helps them develop and learn as a starting point, I think is useful. And then with regards to Facebook's really useful as a learning tool, because you can set it up as a learning platform, because there's lots of units. So it will take in, you can store lots of videos on there, you can go live on there, you can do lots of sessions on there. But also you can create collaboration, so you can start conversations. So you can just pop a question in and say, let's talk about this today, and people then start to join in. People are doing it anyway. Everyone's got one of these. Everyone has got one of these, so we're not asking them to log into a platform that they don't have access to. And kind of, I worked across the two channels at Ann Summers, which was the retail channel as well. And I would do it differently for retail, because they're a different audience. They have different, they want to get something different out of their learning. So again, it goes back to knowing your audience, asking the right questions, putting the learning where the people are to make that bit easy for them.
Two really interesting points. One from James saying, do you think the fact that everyone's kind of familiar with Zoom through pub quizzes, family Zooms, all of that stuff really helped you, so that it wasn't you were just taking people into a completely unknown world? They were familiar with it. And the other interesting point was, did you get recognition from the leadership of Ann Summers of your personal contribution of L&D, but your contribution in turning it all around? Because they couldn't have done it without you. So did they recognise that, or did they just say, "Oh, that's your job, get on with it"? So two things. One is the familiarity with Zoom, and the other is about recognition for you.
So I think the great thing, and where I felt quite on the front foot here, is that we'd been using Zoom with our field teams for quite a few years, because like I said, when I started 3.5 years ago with Ann Summers, I knew that I needed to be able to get to them in a remote and digital way. So the field teams were really quite comfortable with using Zoom. And what that means is that when we're integrating new people, it feels easier, because it's softened, isn't it? Because the person that has brought you into the business is saying, look, we use this Zoom platform. All you do is register, click on the link. Sarah's not going to see you. And they already had a great learning culture. So over the years that I've been with Ann Summers, they were already, they love the learning that they get, and they're very keen to develop. So I think that we were ahead of the game there with Zoom and webinar based learning. And the second question.
So what about recognition for you?
Recognition.
Yes.
Do you know what I have had from the kind of the leaders out there, and for the women, the leaders at the top of their business? I have had so much recognition. So there was an endless stream of kind of gifts and flowers, and that real from the heart appreciation of, oh my God, thank God you literally did flip this ship for us. So yeah, I absolutely know how appreciated I am by them. They're just gold. They absolutely champion female empowerment, and that's what it's all about.
That is excellent. That's very, and I think that's probably a really perfect point to end on. We're just on the quarter past the hour. So Sarah, thank you. Thanks for sharing with us. It's an amazing story of a complete turnaround from chaos to amazing success, and your own contribution to that. And I'm very pleased indeed that you were acknowledged for what you've done and not taken for granted. And it sounds like a very kind of happy organization. And in many ways, that sense of community was very important. You can't force things on to people who are untrusting, suspicious, and all of that. They were welcome. They welcomed you because they trusted you. And the organization seems to have responded to that trust. So congratulations. I thought that was a fantastically useful session. As you can see, that Sarah's contacts are on the screen next to the Summer Forum slide, and the presentation is down at the bottom. You can download that if you'd like to. So appreciate you clapping. There's lots of thanks. Really inspiring session, says Kate. Truly impressive, says Nick. And so it goes on. Lots of thanks, very encouraging. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, all the way down the screen. So excellent work. Perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah.
And thank you as well, Nigel. And thank you to Don and all the Learning Technologies team, everyone that's pulled this together this week. It's been fabulous to be a part of it.
That's great. Well, it's totally teamwork. You're absolutely right.
Totally.
Completely teamwork. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to end the session. And don't forget, the next session is this afternoon, coming in at 2:45, accelerating your L&D career. I hope to see you there. And again, final thank you to Sarah. Take care, everyone.